Greetings, Exile. It's me, the idiot who is still playing and making content for PoE 1 when he should clearly be shifting his focus to PoE 2, which is bound to get much more attraction. But if I did that, it would be a betrayal. A betrayal to the fans and to the most loyal followers of Sir Bonksalot. And above all, it would be a betrayal to Sir Bonksalot himself, who has mastered the secret art of bonking by overcoming the same trials his ancestors did. So now, witness the true potential of Sir Bonksalot the 8th. What you just witnessed is the power of BONK, also known as stun, a mechanic so underrated and ignored that barely anyone even knows about it, let alone how to scale it. You see, whenever you land a hit, it always has a chance to stun, interrupting any action that the target was performing, visible by a slight flinch animation on the target. Damage over time, reflected damage such as from impale, and self-damage like from trauma stacks can never inflict a stun. The chance to stun gets calculated using this formula. And any hit which deals more than 50% of target's maximum health will always inflict a stun. Meanwhile, the target with energy shield always has a 50% chance to avoid being stunned, regardless of whether they are at full energy shield or at 1. Melee hits and physical hits get a bonus to stun chance, while non-physical and range hit always get a penalty. And this gets calculated using this formula. Now, it's almost impossible to deal 50% target's maximum health every single hit. So this is where stun threshold reduction comes in. This stat reduces the amount of damage required to stun the target by counting their maximum life as much lower value than it actually is, but only for the purpose of calculating the chance to stun, and gets calculated using this formula. By default, you should aim for at least 75% reduced stun threshold for a stun build, as anything of that provides diminishing returns. So with 75% reduction, target effectively counts as being only at 25% of its maximum health, making it much easier to stun them. By default, a stun lasts for a minimum of 350 milliseconds, with stuns over 700 milliseconds being displayed by a swirl over target's head. Ruthless blows, which have a base duration of 800 milliseconds, stacked with the default 350 milliseconds, so Ruthless Blow can become the base for landing the longest stun possible. This stun duration can be scaled further with stun duration modifiers, and gets calculated using this formula. Now that you understand the basics of how stun works, let's talk about why Heavy Strike is one of the best skills for a stun build. Heavy Strike is a melee physical strike skill, so it fills up the criteria for the 50% bonus from being a melee and a physical skill. It also inherently has 25% reduced stun threshold reduction and a very high chance to deal double damage, which can be easily pushed to 100% with a few additional sources. And if we link it with trauma support, we gain a lot of flat physical damage, and not just that, we also gain a massive amount of stun duration through trauma stacks, totaling up to 12 seconds when combined with other sources, with stuns from ruthless blows lasting even longer. But with all these trauma stacks, we'll be taking a lot of self damage. So to deal with that, we have a lot of physical damage reduction, instant leech from Gore Dancer, and we are even converting some of the physical damage taken to chaos. To take this even further, and to make sure that we have enough damage to stun anything, we rely on Rage, which grants 1% more damage per Rage. With 114 Rage combined with 110% increased Rage effect from Berserk and Rite of Ruin, we gain a massive 239% more damage. And with Crave the Slaughter, we also gain 239% increased attack speed. Now, this is not a one-punch build where you just go in and stun in a single hit. This build requires ramping, and you need to understand certain breakpoints if you want to successfully stun and take down uber bosses. Most bosses cannot be stunned during certain actions and gain stun immunity after recovering from a stun for 4 seconds. So our goal is not to stun them often, but to make our stun count when it lands. To do this, you need to first mark your target with Warlord's Mark. Then ramp up until you have at least 40 trauma stacks. Then activate your tincture and wait for the stun to land. Once the target is stunned, keep hitting them until you reach 6-7 trauma stacks. After this point, every hit that you take from self-damage will count as a savage hit, allowing you to activate Vengeful Cry. Then all you need to do is activate Berserk and keep pounding the boss to your heart's content. Let's take a look at our equipment and gems. But before we do that, keep in mind that the gear I'm about to show you is fully min-maxed. You don't need the exact same gear, so just focus on the modifiers that I'm going to point out. First is our main weapon, which I like to call the BONK stick. A mace specifically designed to improve not just the bonking potential, but also the clear potential of Sir Bonks-a-lot by a lot. Now, let me be honest with you, this is an off and a trash build, so no one is gonna have a weapon like this just sitting on trade. So you're left with two options. Either you mirror it from me, which is straight up stupid, or just craft it yourself using the steps I've listed on Mobiletics Guide. If you don't like this version of Bonk Stick, just use a pile driver with as much physical damage and attack speed as possible, as that should do just fine. Next is our body armor, which provides a lot of armor and physical damage reduction. The onslaught modifier that you see here comes from Essence of Insanity and works great with self damage. Look for a body armor with at least 4.5k maximum armor and around 7% physical damage reduction. For implicits, use Eldritch Currency to roll Warcry buff effect and physical damage taken as chaos. After that is our helmet, which has the Fractured Warcry buff effect modifier. This modifier is only found on item dropped from Corel in Syndicate. Look for one with high maximum life, any required resistances, and an open prefix to craft Warcry buff effect. Yes, this can be crafted using crafting bench also. For implicits, roll physical damage taken as chaos and reduce mana cost of attack skills. Next are our gloves, which are pretty simple. Look for high maximum life, attack speed, and any required resistances, with the open prefix to craft whatever you need. For implicits, roll additional strike target and ignore enemy physical damage reduction modifier. After that comes our boots, which are also straightforward. Look for high maximum life, at least 25% movement speed, and any required resistances or attributes. For implicits, roll action speed and anything else you find useful. Now for our jewelry, we're using a desiccated belt for Acceleration Shrine, which provides a huge boost by giving a lot of action speed and movement speed. This will likely be the most expensive item in the build. That said, the build still works fine without it, just not at the same level. If you can't afford it, or if it gets removed in the future, you can use a Pierce Girdle, Mage Blood, Headhunter, or even a good rare build that can be anointed. For rings, we're using Fugitive Ring, which grants maximum chaos resistance. This ring can only roll chaos modifiers, so aim for high chaos resistance, some attributes if needed, and maximum life, with an open prefix to craft reduce mana cost of attack skills. Then mirror it using Calandra's Touch for the second slot. Lastly, for the amulet, I was using a Strangle Grasp, which I very luckily corrupted into a strong rare. You don't need that though, so just use a regular Strangle Grasp with Endurance, Natural Authority, Siren's Ambition, and Berserking as anoints. If you can't afford that, or if you're playing in SSF, just use a decent rare amulet with Berserking and anoint Endurance on the belt. Now let's take a look at our gems. For our main damage setup, we have Heavy Strike linked to Brutality, Melee Physical, Trauma, Ruthless, and Greater Ancestral Call support. Heavy Strike is also imbued with Endurance Charge of Melee Stun, which gives the most value without any downside. Other good imbue options are Rage, Damage on Full Life, and Behead support. If you don't have Endurance Charge of Melee Stun, you must swap out Ancestral Call support for it. For our Aura setup, we use Pride, Purity of Elements, and Flesh and Stone linked to Enlighten support. For damage boosting setup, we use Vengeful Cry linked to more duration, Expert Retaliation, and Life Tap support. For our defense setup, we use Ball Bolt and Shell linked to cast when damage taken and Life Tap support. For movement, we use Leap Slam linked to faster attacks. Lastly, for utility, we have War Banner, Ancestral Cry, and Berserk all linked to Life Tap support. For this build, we are using two 8 passive large cluster jewels. One of them grants Overlord, Fuel the Fight, and Heavy Hitter, while the other grants Force Multiplier, Iron Breaker, and Master the Fundamentals, which we are going to skip. We are also using 3 Megalomaniac jewels, out of which 2 grant Born of Chaos and Heavy Hitter. Having Born of Chaos is very important for this build, So if you cannot find it on a Megalomaniac, roll it on a small Crusher Jewel for chaos resistance instead. The third Megalomaniac grants Enduring Composure and Warning Shout. Enduring Composure is extremely important here, as it's the only source for us to generate endurance charges. So if you cannot find it on a Megalomaniac, roll it on a small Cluster Jewel for armor instead. We are also using a unique small Cluster Jewel called Natural Affinity, which grants a total of 10% less damage taken and 20% chance to deal double damage while stationary. We are also using Flesh and Flame Jewels to allocate Unbreakable from Juggernaut, which grants a lot of defense. Our Watcher's Eye grants Intimidate and increased physical damage while affected by Pride. Lastly, we have socketed a Glorious Vanity Jewel near Eternal Youth, which grants the Divine Flesh Keystone. This makes us very tank, as we already have 90% maximum chaos resistance in the build. And if you use one with this particular number, Expertise and Ancestral Knowledge will grant double damage. Just make sure it is sacrificed in the name of Zivakwa. I'm also using a few rune grafts which I think are worth mentioning. First is a rune graft of Warp, which grants increased buff duration and reduced debuff duration. This buff duration works for trauma stacks and Vengeful Cry as well. Then there is rune graft of River, which provides easy life recovery on low life and prevents us from dying to trauma stacks. Lastly, there is rune graft of Treachery, which grants increased mana reduction efficiency and has no downside for us, as we are a physical build and only use putative elements which only affects allies. Now, I can't cover every single thing in such a short video, so I always make sure to create a detailed Mobilitics guide to help you level and transition smoothly. Do check it out, as it's much more detailed. Overall, this has been an amazing league. I made a lot of builds and I learned a lot too. So in future, you can expect even more stupid, off-meta trash builds. I thank every one of you for the love and support you have shown throughout the league. That said, in a few days, we will be hosting a end of league giveaway event on our Discord server, where I will be giving away this build and all other 3 builds that I made during this league to a few lucky winners. So if you want a chance to be one of those winners, subscribe, join our Discord server and come participate in the giveaway. But this time, I'm setting a special rule. If you win and do not claim your build within 3 days, I will rehost the giveaway and give it to someone else. So make sure to message me if you are the winner. If you like these type of off-meta trash builds, make sure to complete all the formalities by liking, subscribing and even bonking that notification bell. As always, thanks for watching, Exile.